Welcome to Quilling It, where authors spill the ink on writing, publishing, and promoting your book in today's market.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Paul Regner.
And I'm Lindsay Franklin.
And today we are going to talk about agents. To agent or not to agent? That is the question. Hey, but before we get started, we actually have a little podcast milestone that we just passed. We have surpassed 1,000 listens, 1,000 downloads, streams, however you term it.
Oh, that's exciting. Yay! Confetti cannon.
Yeah. It actually happened a few weeks ago. I forgot to mention it on our last, but I think at this point we're around 1,200.
Oh my gosh.
Something around there. Yeah, pretty cool, right? So
that's amazing.
We are a relatively young podcast, so that's kind of a cool, in the big scheme of podcasts out there, maybe that's small potatoes, but I think it's pretty cool for a podcast just beginning. So yes, celebrate the victories along the way, right?
Yes, it's big for us. I love that for us. Yay. Thank you, listeners. We love you. We appreciate you.
Thank you everyone for listening. We sincerely hope you're enjoying it. You're learning something, and we just appreciate you coming with us on this podcast discussion. So speaking of which, today we are talking about agents, and I did have an agent at one time. I do not currently have an agent, but when I first was signed for my trilogy, my science fiction trilogy, I had an agent that helped me kind of negotiate that contract. And I think, number one, that's one thing I would point out is a pretty great thing to have an agent for when you do get that chance to have a contract. It's good to have someone, negotiating that with you, make sure they can read through all the fine print and figure out if you're getting a good deal and a good cut and all that good stuff, which is difficult to know unless you're like some sort of literary lawyer or something. So agents are pretty savvy with that kind of thing. So that was my experience. He really helped me with that. But then really it was kind of like a rush when I published all those books. And then at the end, I switched to indie. So at that point, we parted ways and I haven't had an agent since. So my experience with having an agent is relatively minimal as opposed to Lindsay's, who's had an agent for many years now and can tell us, Lindsay, what are the pros? What are the important aspects of having an agent? How has it benefited you? And what should people look for as far as like getting an agent, what their agent should do for them?
Yes, I love this topic. This is great. And I have been with my agent for a very long time. I signed with her in December of 2010. So we are going on 16 years together.
Wow.
It's a long time. So she's been part of my team from...
She must be really good.
Early days. I love her. I love her to pieces. And, this is my agent who stuck by my side through 6 years of submissions where I didn't make this poor woman a dime for 6 years. And she was still there, still managing my career and brainstorming with me, figuring out what's next, what are we going to do? And, I used to call her my long-suffering agent because of this. And she, I think at one point said, that sounds so bad. It sounds so negative. Like, I'm happy to be here. So I changed it to my faithful agent, Rachel. So I call her my faithful agent rather than long-suffering. But so I've obviously had a very good experience with her. She's been a very valuable member of my team, and we'll kind of talk about all of the ways that she's helped me specifically and some of the things that agents should be doing for you. And then we're really going to talk about some things that might cue you that your agent may not be a good fit for you or might not be serving you as well as they could be, because I have certainly seen plenty of that. I happen to have a good experience, but that's not true for everybody in the publishing industry by a long shot. And there are a lot of instances where you may or may not even need an agent. So we're going to talk about that too.
I can start with some cautionary tales from especially one author friend I'm thinking of in particular where he his experience with a couple agents made him basically say, "Oh, agents are kind of like literary gamblers. They're out there thinking, hey, I'll take a gamble on this author. Oh, did they sell a bunch on their first guy? Oh, nope. Okay, on to the next one." And then they'll just drop them and leave them in the dust. So I don't know. That may be the atypical type of literary agent. I don't have vast experience, but I'm going on what my friend's experience was, because I guess this happened more than once to him, where it was kind of like that initial, like, oh, you're great, you're amazing. And then once he didn't become a bestseller, it was kind of like crickets. Like, are you still there? Like, I thought you were going to help me with my career here. So what do you think with your lengthy experience? Are there warning signs that you can look out for so that doesn't happen? Like, what do you, is there questions you could ask an agent when you're in sort of that negotiation phase?
Yeah, and I think that's a very common experience. So I hate to call it typical because then that almost makes it sound like it's normal or to be expected, and but it's not good. It's very
Yeah.
common, but it's not good. So if that has happened to you, you are certainly not alone.
Mm,
But that's definitely not what we want. And gambling is, I mean, that's true. That's legit. That's a good word for it. Agents are gambling. They are betting on us, the
mm,
authors. Publishers are doing that too. They're betting on us and
mm.
hoping. Of course, every agent hopes that each client they sign is going to be a massive hit, a bestseller, it is
Sure.
going to find success. And of course, publishers want that for all of the books they acquire as well. And of course, we know only a certain percentage of authors or a certain percentage of books sort of reach those types of sales milestones. So there can definitely be that vibe with agents where if you don't have that massive blow up success that they were hoping for, because of course they were hoping for that in the beginning, then they have maybe moved on and they're back in their slush pile, or they're devoting more time and attention to the authors in their suite or on their list, who are maybe having more of that commercial success. So that can be really hard as as an author, who is more mid list or is having a more of a slow takeoff in their career. That's really frustrating to feel like, hey, I'm over here. I actually need the help. I need you to help boost me to kind of, so that we can get something going here. And it's like the people who are already successful sometimes seem to get more of the attention. Not seem
Mm.
to, they do. I'm not going to lie. That happens. I mean,
Right.
I got to be honest with you guys. Of course that happens. And so
Um,
it's frustrating because then it just becomes this like self-fulfilling prophecy that
yeah.
if you don't ever give any attention to the like strugglers or the ones who are not taking off the way you hope, then they're never going to take off. And so, yeah, so that's a tough thing. I would say when you are thinking about signing with an agent, um, it would be good to look at who they represent. How long have they been representing those authors? Do those authors mention them in acknowledgments of their books? Do they talk about their agents on social media? Like maybe do a little bit of like the stalker deep dive that you can do from the publicly available information about that agent to see what are their clients saying. Is there a massive something that's a little bit of a red flag for me is when an agent has like hundreds of authors on
Right.
their list, because that signals to me that they, unless they have a bunch of like associate agents or
Mm.
people working underneath them, there's like another word for it I can't think of right now, but like junior agents maybe, helping them manage that
Minions.
list. Minions, yes. Their staff, their help. um, yeah, unless they've kind of got that situation going on, I'm looking at that wondering, how can you possibly be giving the time and attention, very thoughtful career advice
Yeah.
to that many clients all on your own? That's a red flag for me. Um, so maybe we should also talk about what an agent is in case there is, some of our listeners out there might be thinking, I know that agents are a thing, but like, what does an
Mm.
agent even do? What are they
Yes.
supposed to be doing?
What is an agent?
What is an agent? So, especially, this is mostly applicable to traditional publishing, and we
Mm.
can maybe talk a little bit, later about if you're an indie, some instances where you might want to engage an agent, but
I was
typically this is,
actually going to throw
yeah.
that question to you because I was curious what you
Mhm.
think. I know my
Yeah.
answer for that, but I was as a
Like
jaded
those.
indie author,
Like,
but you can tell me. But go ahead. What? Sorry. Keep going.
no,
You were
yeah,
on a good track there.
that'll be a fun question to unpack
Yeah.
for us. Um, yes, so this is mostly happening over in the traditional side, because typically most publishers are not going to accept cold submissions, meaning
Mm.
that if you
Hmm.
don't have a contact there, if they don't know who you are, most publishing houses are not just open to submissions like go ahead and send
Right.
us your book if we have not specifically asked for it, right?
Right.
So you need an in. You need an in to be able to even get your proposal or your query letter or whatever at that publisher, like to the acquisitions editor or like the intern who gets it before the acquisitions editor sees it. You need an in most
Yeah,
of the time.
what is that line you typically see when you're looking at publishers like, "Oh, I'd love to be a writer for this publisher." You'll see that we do not currently accept unsolicited manuscripts. And that's
Uh-huh.
what they mean. Like, we don't accept them unless you have an agent that's like a middleman, right?
Yes, exactly. And an unsolicited manuscript is that cold outreach. They don't know who you are. You're just trying to send them something. A
Yeah.
solicited manuscript or submission would be like if you met an acquisitions editor from that publishing house at a conference or something, and they said, we like this. You pitch to them, they like it, they request a proposal or they request 3 chapters or a full manuscript, whatever it is. That's a solicited submission. They've asked you for it. They want those materials. And so most publishers, because they don't have the staff to sift through like they would receive thousands upon thousands, and they just do
Yeah.
not have the staff to
It's too
sift
much,
through.
overwhelming. Yeah, yeah.
It's too much.
So the agent is almost like a filter for like, hey, this person knows the literary world and they've selected the best of the best. Okay, that's all we have time for.
Yes, it serves as kind of a first gate, and the agent is the first gatekeeper that is vetting, we hope. If they're doing
Right.
their job, they should be vetting and only signing authors who they feel, with their industry experience and their knowledge and everything, are ready for publication. Right.
Hmm.
So that is one function of an agent. And it's beneficial to both the publisher and authors, because as authors, we're getting that open door
Hmm.
to that publisher that doesn't accept unsolicited submissions. And it's beneficial for the publisher because they're kind of using the agents to filter their slush pile. Slush pile is that whole wave of manuscripts that come in, and it has to be sorted through and weeded through, and they'll pull the ones out that appeal to them and dive further into those. But the publishers are using the agents to like drastically minimize the number of manuscripts that end up in their slush piles.
Yeah, interesting. I just thought of a question. Because like we said, like a lot of publishers won't, like, unless you have an agent, you can't just send your stuff to them. They're going to be like, nope, sorry. Now, what if you go to a writers conference and there's like an acquisitions editor there and they're accepting pitches,
Mhm.
and you go in and you say, "Hey, I have a pitch, but I don't have an agent." What is there a certain protocol? I'm sure they still listen, but are they kind of half interested at that point? How does that work?
So this is actually very common, and it happens a lot where because that barrier is removed, that gate, has been opened because the acquisitions editor from the publishing house is there in front of you, and you as the author have access to pitch directly to them.
Mhm.
And so that's one of those exceptions to how you can get your foot in the door or get your work in front
A
of an
loophole,
acquisitions editor.
people, a loophole.
Loophole. We love that loophole. Um, and so that's normal. That's not going to phase an acquisitions editor. They're really just going to be dialed in and listening to your pitch and looking at your materials if they want to see them there in the meeting, and telling you whether or not they want to see more. So the process at that point looks exactly the same as if you have an agent. Where it gets different and where it gets a little tricky is if it keeps going through the process there at the publisher and they decide they want to offer a contract.
Mm,
Then the author is in an interesting position of having an
yeah,
offer on the table, but not having somebody there to look over that contract.
right.
So
That's tough.
you Yes. And so I've seen authors who are in that position who have hired either an agent or like an IP lawyer or somebody who's
Mm,
going to, be able to look over the legalese in the contract.
yeah. Geez, how expensive is that?
Yeah, I don't even know, like, hourly, how much, and I'm sure that's what they're doing is probably charging hourly to review that contract, so
But
that
I
would be
wonder
kind
if
of
you did have a
mhm.
contract on the table, if you could like turn around and go like, "Hey, agents out there, I got a contract. Why don't you be my agent? I just did half the work for you."
Yes, and that absolutely does happen,
Mm.
and it's almost like the roles are reversed there, where almost
Right.
the
Yeah.
publisher did the vetting in that case, and that I have seen that happen. So if you're an author in that position where you have a publisher who's now courting you, and you're going to go try to get an agent to help you navigate this, you then need to ask yourself, what role do you want an agent to have in your career at that point?
Yeah.
Are you looking just for help negotiating this one contract? Or are you wanting to engage the type of agent that I have, which is somebody who's going to help manage my whole career, where she's, like part of my team in like the visionary sense and looking forward and trying to help me manage my life as an author. And so you're in a position of power at that point as the author, which is cool because there are not very many situations where authors get to be in the position of power in
Yes.
publishing, at least in trad pub. So
Yes. We're usually
it's
just the peons that do what we're told.
it's true. And for the privilege of getting to tell stories, we're like, yep, let's go. I will be the
That's right.
peon. It's fine. um, yeah. So that can be an interesting thing where you would then, because you might suddenly have a ton of agents who are interested, and then
Yeah.
you need to kind of like sift through and figure out what am I really looking for, and be real selective because
Yeah.
you did do all the work. In that particular case, I would only engage with an agent long term at that point if this
Mm.
is an agent who is really interested in managing my career and wants to like help with all of the future contracts and not
Yeah.
just looking at the legalese in this contract, because I could just hire the lawyer to do that if we,
Right.
do the one-time fee and be done with it, because I did the other part of the the agent's job on that particular contract. So it's tricky. There's a lot of different kinds of situations that can come up, but you do see that a lot where
Yeah.
those relationships are born out of a pitch that happened at a writer's conference.
And I think that would give you a little bit of clout, at least at that point, with like, you're not
Yeah.
just coming to them empty handed. I just like, hey, I got a contract, I've
Hmm.
got something solid here.
Yeah.
And then it made me think too. I know a lot of writers' conferences, there are agents there that you're pitching to as well, which I think would be um, a far more receptive crowd because you're speaking face to face as opposed to like, I don't know, a literary agent's typical day where they're getting dozens, if not hundreds, of proposals in their inbox and they're just kind of like flipping through, like, oh my gosh, I've got so much to get through today. But now you're face to face, it's a more relaxed environment and you've got their full attention. So I
Yes.
would think it's a much better place if you're seeking an agent to actually snag one, right?
Absolutely. And it also gives you the opportunity to have a conversation, whereas an email is not that. If they accept queries via email, that's great. But
Yeah.
it's just you have your cover letter or whatever, and your written materials, and that's it. So having that face-to-face pitch meeting with an agent is so valuable because it gives you the opportunity to talk through that story. The agent can ask questions. I see my boss at Enclave, Steve Lobby, is also a literary agent, and I see this happen all the time at pitch meetings with Steve, where he will like pull stuff out of the author he's talking to, where he wants to know more about why they went a certain direction, a story, or something is not sitting quite right with him about the story. They can
Mm.
kind of unpack that a little bit, maybe talk through options, maybe talk through things that, hey, would you be willing to revise XYZ and maybe
Yeah.
resubmit that to me in a few months? Or, hey, this story idea is way too much like this other thing that's coming out next year from us, but I like your writing. What other ideas do you have? Can you pitch those to me right now? Like it offers that opportunity to have a conversation and to not have it be that one and done email that might not hit. So that's one of the greatest benefits of writers conferences. If you are looking to become a traditional author and you want to seek an agent, seek a trad publisher, writers conferences are extremely valuable. And I know it's a big investment, but I still always recommend them because there are so many potential benefits to it. So
Yeah.
this is one.
That's funny. You mentioned Steve Lobby since he runs Enclave. I wonder if he likes a book and he'd be like, hey, I'll be your publisher and your agent. I'll do both.
That
Because
happens sometimes too.
he, he does offer really, he's got good insight on things. Do you want to hear a funny Steve Lobby story?
Always.
When I was doing the Space Drifters trilogy, he was asking for names for each book because it was going to be Space Drifters and then like a little subtitle. So he asked me what I had, and I go, okay, the first one, Space Drifters, the Emerald Enigma, and the third one's going to be Space Drifters, the Ghost Ship, and then the second one is going to be Space Drifters, the greatest game show in the universe. And he goes, okay, which of these things doesn't fit with the other two? And I'm
One of
like,
these things is not
yeah,
like the
I
other.
know. Right. It was totally that. And I'm like, yeah, he goes, you have 3 words in each one except for that middle one. He goes, why don't we brainstorm? And we did. And he came up with, or I think we both brainstormed back and forth. And the one we landed on was the Iron Gauntlet. And I'm so glad he did that. And I look back now and I'm like, why didn't I see that? That's so obvious. Like the Ghost Ship, the Iron Gauntlet, the Emerald Enigma. Yes, of course, it fits. But, sometimes when you're in that haze of just trying to get it all finished, I don't know what happens. You sort of lose a little bit of that. But all that to say, like when you get someone that really knows like the industry and what they're doing and what things work, they can offer you that really good advice where you look back later and you're like, oh man, I'm so grateful. And I would assume that's what a good agent can do. You probably have some stories like that about your agent, like things she's saved you from.
100%. And this is another interesting nuance of agents that we should talk about. So agents come to agenting through a variety of different avenues. So back in the day when I first got into the publishing industry, literary agents were kind of not new, but like a newer concept. This was not something that had been around for 50 years at that point. Like it was a slightly newer concept. And so many of the literary agents who were kind of practicing back then were former editors who had transitioned into the agency role, or they were former authors. There were a few like that where they kind of, wanted to get more onto the businessy side of things. These days, that is not necessarily true. There are a lot of people who come to agenting just straight out the gate. And actually, my agent was one of those. She was kind of like maybe that first generation of agents who just went straight from college or just like went right into the industry as an agent. Like that was always her goal. So she's very business minded in the way that she approaches things. That's kind of, I actually don't know what her degree is in now that I think about it. I feel like I used to know if it was in like business or, English or, whatever. I don't know where it is, but an agent like Steve brings all of his years of editorial experience to the table as well as his business sense. So he's a really good person for brainstorming through stuff like your titles and things like that. He brings an editorial mind to it. And some agents are very like marketing and promotion and, like they have that kind of background. And so they're going to be really helpful with those kinds of things and helping launch your career in that sense. So agents can kind of come from all different angles to this particular role. And you want to make sure that you are working with an agent who aligns with what you are looking for, because all of those backgrounds are very valid. They are all perfectly acceptable for like, this is what my experience is in or my education is in. And that's, why I'm an agent. That's completely fine. You don't have to have been an editor or a writer yourself or whatever to be an excellent agent. But you as the author need to make sure that whoever you engage is able to give you the type of things you're hoping to receive from your agent in particular. So My agent gives, like, she's not a writer or an editor herself, but she is like the most informed reader you could ever find. And
Mm.
so she will be able to identify for me things that are just not working or are not quite right for some reason. And
Oh,
she can't
story problems.
story problems. And she can't
Oh.
always tell me why necessarily, but she can
Mm.
tell me I was not feeling it at this point.
A little bit of
And,
a developmental edit, a little bit, kind of.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like a developmental edit in the dark because she knows, like, she knows something is not like, this is, I'm not feeling this, something is wrong here, but she can't always tell me exactly what it is. And so then it's my job, which I'm fine with because I'm an author, I'm also an editor. And so this happened.
Mm.
Okay, I'll give you the specific story here with this one, which and I'm sure I've told this story before, but it's with The Story Peddler when I was drafting that. And I sent my agent the first completed draft of that story. And I just knew in my soul that this idea was going to be the one that we finally got signed. You know,
Mm.
we'd been getting rejections for a few years at this point, and I just knew The Story Peddler is going to be the one that gets signed. This is my debut series, guys. And so I
And you
sent
were
it to
right.
her. I was. However, However, my agent read that first draft. And again, this is my long suffering agent who has been by my side and
You're patient.
patient, faithful agent.
Faithful.
And she had loved everything that I had ever sent to her prior to this. And even my green stuff that now I look back and laugh that, you know, like that she loved it. I'm like, oh, it was so bad. And it was, but like she saw the potential in it. Right. So she had been a big fan of mine from the beginning. She's my first fan. And so I sent this to her just so full of hope because I knew that this idea was addressing a lot of the reasons for the rejections that we'd gotten up to that point, which was on my fantasy series that we had pitched previously. We had heard a lot of, we like Lindsay's writing, we really like her characters, but this idea, just the concept as a whole, doesn't feel fresh. It doesn't feel unique. It doesn't feel, not to be too harsh, but like interesting. It's not interesting enough. And so
there's nothing special here. What was that one guy?
Oh, that guy. Yep.
We talked about a bad experience of Lindsay's at another conference.
Yes, that guy. But
the guy
I mean,
who shall not be named.
We had heard it, you know, that was obviously the harshest version of it, but we had heard kind of that same note in different ways. And so I knew that this concept that just like, boom, exploded in my head with The Story Peddler, this was going to be an idea that was different and fresh and fun and unique enough that a publisher, somebody was going to take a chance on this. So I sent her this manuscript so full of hope. And she got back to me and said, I mean, essentially, she didn't say this because she's too kind. She would never like say it this way, but she hated it. And yes, there were things about it she loved, but the story itself, she said to me, I got to this particular scene and she told me what the scene was. And she said, I closed the file and just did not feel the need to keep reading anymore.
Ouch.
I mean, yeah.
From DNF.
A DNF from my agent, who's my biggest fan. Like this was, like it's very seriously critical feedback. And I knew as the architect of this particular story that the scene that she called out was the structural midpoint of the book. And it was supposed to be this big context shifting midpoint of the story. Like it was a big structural moment too. And the fact that that was the particular scene that she went, no, I'm actually done. Like, I don't need to open this anymore. Major problem, huge, like red flag, like this, she's right. This isn't working.
Because you want that to be an epic shift and maybe even something where people are like, no, right? Is that what I'm picking up? Okay.
Yes. Something where it's like big twist and like, wow. And it like propels you into the second half of the book and you're just like, can't turn the pages fast enough. That's what you want. You want that moment to be that. And instead my agent, my faithful agent who, you know, was my very first fan said, nope, DNF, I'm done. You know, 1 star on Goodreads. So because of that, I well, I think I cried for 2 days. And then I was like, okay, let's get to work. Let's get to work and figure this out. And I received very bad advice from a colleague of mine at the time who said, well, she just doesn't get you, or she doesn't get it. She does, like she's not,
Mm,
is she even really serving you? You've been pitching for all these years and she's not landed you a contract yet. You should probably
mm,
just cut her loose anyway. That was
yeah.
terrible advice. Like
Yeah.
that, sometimes that is the right choice. Sometimes you should cut your agent loose and just part ways and
You
everything.
could see why someone I could see why someone would say that though. They are
Sure.
probably trying to protect you like, "Oh, I like especially if they know your work and they like your work. Like, hey, they don't get it,
Yes.
you know."
Exactly, and trying to kind of, like, be encouraging,
Right. Yeah.
but because my agent had been such a fan of my writing, even when I knew craft-wise I wasn't, like, there yet, she saw
Right.
all of
Yeah, it's
that
not like
in
she was
me.
negative all the way through because then you would
Exactly.
know, yeah, this person doesn't get me. So obviously you knew she does get me,
Mhm.
but she realizes there's a big issue here.
Yes, and
Yeah,
she
that's a
doesn't
good
like
that's good.
this. She
Right.
likes me, she doesn't like this, and
This
because
specific middle point. Yeah.
Mhm, and this specific way that I had handled this idea. And so, she had earned her way into my inner circle. And so when somebody who has like very very faithfully earned their way into your inner circle and gives you that kind of feedback, like even when it hurts so bad, you gotta listen. And so,
Yeah.
so after a couple days of kind of just mourning, I sat down and thought, okay, so what can I preserve from this story that is the thing that I felt like, yes, this is it. This is my breakout. This is my debut, while dealing with all of her issues with it. And I had to just sit there, and I know I prayed a lot and just, I asked myself and asked God, I'm not even lying, but, and not that I don't necessarily, think that I sit there like God drops ideas into my head. So that's not really what I'm saying, but I just needed to like, I
That's how it
needed
works for
to
me.
the Lord just speaketh into
A light
into your
shines
brain.
down, and there's my next book. No, I'm just kidding.
Yay.
He does inspire me though.
Yes, absolutely. That's such a weird thing to talk about without like sounding like a crazy person, but I feel like
I know.
other
I hear
writers of
voices in
faith,
my
right?
head.
Other writers of faith understand what we're talking about, where you're just inviting God to like illuminate for you like what am I doing here? And I remember feeling like you are telling the wrong story. Ask yourself, what does this story really want to be about? And I was trying to make it a Christian allegory. And what it really
Mm,
wanted to be about was art. It wanted to be about story. It wanted to be about the
mm,
power of art. And
mhm.
so once that unlocked in my brain, it was like, well, duh, of course, that's what this story wants to be about. So I redid the whole thing. I scrapped most of the supporting cast. I replotted everything, but it still had that same seed of the idea. The first chapter is almost
Mm,
identical to the very first draft I ever wrote. Like, so
right.
there's something that has always been there from the beginning, but my
And the
agent
concept and
was,
the
Mhm.
magic system
Yes,
probably remained the same.
correct.
Yeah.
That was the piece that carried over, but unlocking that, like knowing what the story really wanted to be about made the magic system expand so much more than what it ever was in the original version, which was just focused on the storytelling element. When I realized this was about like the gift of art and
Yeah.
what that is for us and how powerful and magical art is, it
Yeah.
it unlocked all different kinds of art that this could be about. And that
Yeah.
was so fun.
Yeah.
So it just like expanded everything.
Kind of
So
transcendent. Yeah.
yes. So, because of that really painful note from my agent, that is why we have what did end up being my debut novel, The Story Peddler, in
Yeah.
its current form that people know, and some people, not everybody, but some people love it, and that is, really down to her and that note that she
Right.
gave me.
And
So,
sometimes we put down like, oh, the gatekeepers are stopping me from advancing, but sometimes the gatekeepers are there for a reason because you don't have the right ticket to get in the gate. So that
exactly.
was a good piece of advice. Have you ever heard of that story, that writing craft book called "Write Your Novel from the Middle" by James Scott Bell?
Yes.
Yeah, I think he deals with a lot of that stuff. And you made me think of another thing too. And I don't know if this is really related to your particular issue you had, but KM Weiland wrote this article about the second Captain America movie,
Mm.
And she would always talk about that middle point where your character goes from reactive to active.
Mhm.
And she had this picture of Captain America in the first half of the movie where he just kind of has like this, almost like this wounded look on his face, like, what is all this stuff going around me? I don't understand. Why are these things going wrong? And then all of a sudden, halfway through, she shows this picture of him, and it's just this look of stern determination and like, all right,
Mhm.
I know what's going on and I'm going to do something about it. And she
Yeah.
said that was like where things really solidified for her what the midpoint should be, at least in the
Mhm.
character arc type
Yes.
of angle. But yeah, I don't know. Just that's sort of maybe unrelated, but it just made me think of that when you were talking about the middle.
Yeah, and that midpoint of your story should be doing a lot of really important stuff like
Right.
that, and that should be a huge kind of transition moment for your character where they go from being more passive in the beginning, and a lot of things are happening to them, and they might be trying to
Yeah.
respond to those things, but once you kind of cross that threshold into the second half of the book, they're starting to fight back, and they're starting
Yeah.
to, like, have greater and greater agency and really, like,
Mhm.
attacking, the story problems and all of the forces that are coming against them. So it's a huge moment in the story. And if anybody gets to the middle and goes, meh, then
Yeah.
it's not the best. So,
Right.
yeah, my agent was 100% right about that. That whole story needed to be rethought because it was just not hitting the way that I wanted it to. And it's because I was too in my head about my branding as a Christian fantasy author. I was trying to put too much of my, um, religion. I don't want to say religious beliefs, but kind of. I was trying to like comment on that a little bit too much for this particular story. That's not to say that that's always a bad thing to do. It just wasn't what this story was supposed
Yeah.
to be about. And so it just felt very forced and very not. It was just not what it was supposed to be. So her
Yeah.
sense on that was 100% correct. And it was so valuable and literally changed the trajectory of my career.
It's interesting. It's almost like you were doing what you thought you should do
Mhm.
rather than like maybe your natural artistic instinct, I guess.
100%.
So,
It's
yeah.
because I had kind of been in the industry a little, like, too long at that point, so to speak, because I'd been
Yeah.
absorbing all of the stuff that we hear, that's all true, like about branding and finding your audience and staying in your lane and all of those things. And so in my mind, I am a Christian and I am a fantasy author, and so I was
Right.
supposed to be a Christian fantasy author, and so
Right.
I need to have some
Yeah, whatever
Jesus
that
in my
means.
right, whatever that means. And in my head at the time, all these years ago, it was like, oh, I've got to have like my Jesus character in my Jesus lion, which I
Where's
say is
Aslan? I don't see
right.
Aslan anywhere in this
Yes.
story.
The Jesus
Rejected.
lion. Oh my gosh. Yep, and that's what that was, that scene that she went, "Oh," it was a Jesus lion scene. Not literally a lion, it was like a man, but it was kind of like the big moment with him and kind of this big reveal and just no, it's not working.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that's when it's anytime, whether it's your your faith or maybe some sort of ideology that you have that you're trying to integrate in your story, you
mhm.
never want it to be forced or
No.
heavy-handed, all that stuff. Even if you're reading or watching something and you agree with what the person's
Uh-huh.
trying to say, if it's in your face, you're like, "Oh my gosh, get me out
Yeah.
of here." Because you're
Yeah.
going there for the story. Now, if it's subtly woven in there,
Yes.
story weaver, um, if it's weaved in very subtly and naturally, that's a big part of it, then it can be like super powerful. It can be like,
Yes.
wow, I learned so much. And that could be with like the themes that you're going for too. But yeah, you never want to be too heavy handed. But that's the problem though. I think some people think like, oh, I've got a message and I really have to make sure it's like, front and center, but it's like, no, like it's too much. Like
Too
unless you're
much.
like a master like C.S. Lewis or something, where it's like it's front and center, but it's also subtle in a way. I don't know how he does
Mhm.
it, but anyways, yeah.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
that's another topic. Um, so I was going to ask you. It's interesting because I was thinking like you kind of mentioned a few things that your agent is helping you with, and I know like for me, my initial thought with agents was like, oh, they help you with that contract. Like that's
Mhm.
very important for someone to know how to avoid pitfalls, and they know the verbiage in there. And um, but beyond that, like, because I had like an author friend who had dealt with a couple agents, and like what he told me is like, oh, they were really glowing about my writing at first, and they told me, oh, you're so great, you're the next Stephen King, blah blah blah, and they really built me up. He goes, and then when I published and I didn't sell like tens of thousands of copies, like they just stopped contacting me, and it was just like it
Mhm.
dried up. And that goes back to that gambling kind of thing, like, oh,
Mhm.
this slot machine didn't hit, I'm going to move on to the next one or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, so how do you, I guess the question is, how do you know, how can you sift through that? Because I'm sure if an agent is talking to you, they do like your work. um but maybe number one, beware of the over praise. And number two, is there something, are there specific things you could talk about during that
Mhm.
sort of those initial contact moments before you, I guess, agree like, oh yeah, you're going to be my agent, let's make it official? Are there certain things you can discuss, say like, oh, what is that going to entail? Like, what should I expect, as I'm working with you?
Yeah, I think that is a really good question to ask, kind of how that particular agent foresees this relationship working and what their normal kind of flow is with their clients, because some agents really are very hand-holding, and I don't mean that in a negative way or like a condescending way at all, just meaning they really come alongside their authors, and that's how they like to manage their list, is they come alongside, they're very collaborative, and they really want to work with their authors, on
Mm,
career management and all of those businessy things, and being their author's advocate. Other agents really are simply there about the contracts, and that is all they're interested in. That's all that they care about. And for some authors and what they're looking for, that's what they want. So
mm,
it's really just about having that conversation and figuring out what you're looking for, and if that particular agent is a good fit for you, with their background, how they interact with their authors, how hands on they are or are not. All of those questions can be asked in advance. But if you find yourself in that situation, so you've signed with them, there's been a contract, maybe it didn't explode as big as everybody hoped. And so now you're in that situation of feeling like your agent has kind of dropped you, not officially, but in the sense of their interest has really dropped in you. How do you handle that? And
friend
so
zone, is there a friend zone for agents and authors?
yes, I think that's what it is. It is the friend zone. Oh, the sparkle has worn off. The butterflies are gone. It's just, yeah.
The honeymoon is over.
The honeymoon is over. Um, so the first thing that I would do is I would ask for a meeting. I would ask for a meeting with my
Mm,
agent and say, can we just chat? Can we talk about what's next? And, strategy, planning for what are we going to do now? This didn't go the way that we wanted it to. How are
yeah.
we going to pivot? How are we going to adjust? Should I be working on what's next? And do you have ideas about things that really might hit and things the publishers out there are looking for? Or do we focus on promoting the stuff that's already released? Like, what is the next step? What is the strategy? And if the agent's response is kind of, I don't know, or what do you want to do? Like that sort of thing, then there you go. That's kind of your answer, that like, okay,
Right.
they have, like, Elvis has left the building. They don't
Yeah.
care anymore. And,
Right.
unfortunately, and so it might be time to part ways at that point. But if it could be a number of things where they maybe have just gotten really busy. They may have had a client who did blow up, or who got a movie deal suddenly, or something big happened, and they've been in the middle of kind of managing that. So it's not been like an intentional ghosting, or maybe they've been waiting for, like, giving you space and waiting for you to come to them and say, okay, here's my new idea. Like, so miscommunications can happen too. So I would definitely, if you liked the agent enough initially to sign with them, and you still want to have an agent in your career, it still makes sense for whatever your goals are moving forward, then I would definitely ask for that meeting first and see
Mm,
how they respond to that. It's going to tell a lot about where they're at. If they just bring nothing to the table in the
yeah.
meeting, then it's time probably to part ways, and that's okay
Yeah.
to do.
And do you think like the main once you connect with an agent, let's say you get an agent, do you think like one of the main um, things that they do in that position is pitch your next book to, because it might not be pitching to the same publisher. Maybe you did your first book or your first series with the publisher, and then you have a new book and your agent says like, oh, this new one will be perfect for this other publisher I know,
Mhm.
let's move to them, or whatever it is. um, would you say that's one of the key most important things that you want out of your agent, just that they see your next work and then they go pitch that? It's kind of like your continual pitch PR person, I guess, right?
Yeah. They should always be sort of acting as your, I was gonna say your middleman, but like your representative. That's
Yeah.
literally what they are. They are your representative to publishers. So something you wanna be aware of when you're pitching, and also as you move through your career, because this can change over time, is you wanna have an agent who has relationships with the publishers you want to pitch to, okay? So,
Right.
you wanna make sure, like, if you are
That's a good
a
question to ask
yes.
up front. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, if you know, even if it's some big, massive New York agent who is interested in your work, but primarily what they represent and where their relationships are with publishing houses is like on the nonfiction side, you know, like maybe that's most of what they represent, most of their client list or whatever, and they just happen to really like your, you know, like weird fantasy novel or something, but they don't know a single editor at any of the
Are
my
you talking
cats.
specifically about me, my weird fantasy novels?
Yes, specifically your
Is
weird
there a cat
fantasy.
interruption? What is happening here?
Are fighting. I
Oh,
heard a hiss, which is not usual for my cats, but oh my gosh.
your
Oh, and
orange
now
one was in
she's
the background earlier. I think it was
he's
it was attacking your wombat stuffed animal or something.
yeah, he was doing that. Now he's being crazy and trying to attack his sister, who is on my chair and has been this whole time. He's gotten very territorial and she is not having it. And she could bite this cat in half, I'm telling you. So
So cat fight live on the podcast.
he has lost his mind. Okay. Oliver, get out. Yikes. I'm so sorry. Um, yeah. So let me see if I can twist my chair and like break the eye contact here because this is scary. um, anyway, so the you want to make sure that your publisher has contacts and relationships with the types of or your agent has relationships with the types of publishers you're looking to pitch to.
Right.
Otherwise, it's essentially a cold submission, and maybe having agency letterhead, so to speak, might kind of get a foot in the door. But if that publisher doesn't have previous experience with that agent or agency, they don't have any idea who this agent is, it's not actually going to be that valuable of a contact. You
Mm,
want an agent who has worked with these publishers before, or has worked at an agency that's worked at these publishers before, because sometimes you have a new agent coming in and they personally might not have worked with that publisher, but like the owner of that agency has worked with the publisher, so
mm,
that the publisher
mhm.
knows the agency name. That's
Right.
really what you need, because there's going to be like trust built there.
Sure.
And that's really what it is. They are looking to reduce. My third cat just walked in. Like,
I
guys,
s
it's getting so
I see.
dicey here.
I see. One's behind your chair, the other one is stalking from behind.
Like, I have the two gray and white ones are here, and then there's like the little orange menace is over. This is insane.
Oh,
I'm
there's
so
3.
sorry.
You
There's
guys,
three. Yeah,
what do we
there's
crazy
three.
cat lady, look out.
Cat rancher, as my best friend always says. But yeah, it's the orange guy is the one causing the problems. This is crazy. Anyway, um, hopefully no blood will be shed.
Right.
Um, yes. So um, okay, train of thought. We're gonna get it back. It's gonna be
Right.
fine.
Where were we?
Where were
No,
we?
I guess,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I was just saying, like, the things that an agent does, what are those important things to look for?
Yes.
Obviously, one is pitching your next book to the right publisher.
Yes. Yep.
And like a cool thing that yours is doing, I don't know how typical it is, but yours almost has that developmental edit, or at least that first line of feedback for you,
Hmm. Yes.
which I guess you've seen has been really valuable, because it sounds like she really gets like what makes your stories work and what hinders them.
Yes. And
Um,
she knows that, like, in the context of my career. as well. She
Right.
knows. So I felt I could trust her because she knows, she's a Christian as well. So her
Mm.
saying to me, what's going on with this Jesus character in your
Right.
story is not her being like, I don't like your faith. You know what I mean? That's her.
Right.
She knows
Right.
me, and she knows like me within the context of the publishing industry and our little corner of it. And so I could
Mm.
take that advice really to heart and know what was meant by it. And,
Sure.
so it was such a good nugget of wisdom that
Yeah.
she was sharing with me. So yeah, that is something that she does. And my agent in particular, doesn't necessarily read subsequent books in the in the series before they go to my editor, if that makes sense. So once we're
Hmm.
signed for a series, she will have read book 1 before we start pitching it, but
Right.
I don't send book 2 to her, or book 3, for like feedback on that. So that
Yeah.
at that point, it's just between me and my publisher and my editor, because she's kind of done her job in getting my agent has done her job in getting the
Right.
series placed. And then she's just sort of trusts me and the editorial team to, make sure that the series kind of continues on the way that it should. And
And it's
so,
going to go through
yeah.
several rounds of editing at that point
Yes.
anyway. So it's kind of like she
Yes.
doesn't want to do an extra job that's already being done. That makes sense.
Exactly.
Now, what about on like the promotion marketing kind of side of things? Is that typical for an agent to jump in and help you with? Or I guess it kind of depends on if an agent is kind of knowledgeable in that arena.
Yeah.
What should people even expect that at all? Or, what is your experience?
I think that's really going to depend on the agent and
Yeah.
what kind of background they bring. They should have ideas about kind of, an agent should always have their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the market
Mm.
now, what's happening in the industry now. They should be like one of your most up-to-date resources on that in all regards. So yes, with marketing, they should be able to look at a publisher's marketing plan and know if this is, decent or not, if this is,
Mm.
if we're kind of getting the stuff that one might expect from a publisher of whatever size, we're
Right.
working with. So those are kind of the ways that every agent really should be able to help their clients with the marketing side, even if they don't come from a marketing background. If your agent has a marketing background, then I would expect a lot more in that
Right.
particular area, from them, that they're going to provide a lot more guidance. The same way I would expect, like a Steve Lobby, who was an editor for many years at a publisher, I'm going to expect really good editorial advice from him if I'm his client.
Sure.
So whatever their background is, you're going to, expect they're going to be kind of a superstar in that area. But even if your particular agent doesn't specialize in that, some agencies, like the agency where I'm repped, they have all client webinars that they will put on about specific topics, and they are often focused on marketing things, or like how to manage your newsletter, or
Mm.
ideas for all different kinds of things. And sometimes it's about managing legal things and just all things of interest to professional authors. And they will put all of the agents' heads together to craft these webinars. And it's
Mm.
so valuable because you have
Yeah.
all of these different areas of expertise that each agent is going to bring to that conversation. And they'll all present, they'll all talk about it. And every client who's repped at the agency gets to attend that if they want to. So,
Yeah.
that kind of education is really, really valuable. And I don't know how common that is. Like I said, I've been at this agency for 16
Right.
years. This
Yeah.
is my experience, or 15 and a half. This is my experience personally, and I'm sure they're not the only ones who do this. But it's that is another way that an agent or agency can really be helping their clients, pouring into their clients, and really helping in all aspects, including marketing and promotion, because they
Yeah.
want you to be living your best life in your career and selling as well as possible. It benefits everybody
Sure.
if we're doing as well as we possibly can. And so I feel like a very wise agent or agency takes that view of it, that if we invest in our authors, if we pour in to our stable or suite, or list, however you want to phrase it, it's going to benefit them. It's going to benefit the publishers. It's going to benefit the agents because they get their 15% cut of
Right.
whatever you're selling. So yay.
All right, now I'm going to give you the hard question of the podcast. Let's switch over from traditional to the indie author realm, where no agents are needed.
Okay, so we know Paul's position on this now.
That's right. I gave it away right away. Well, so I'm thinking, like we just talked about all the ways the agent can help you, and one of the main ways is like pitching your book to all these different publishers. If you're indie publishing, you don't need to do that. So that's one big thing that's like wiped off the needed list, right? So you're publishing your stuff, you put it on Amazon, or maybe you're publishing wide, whatever you're doing. So you don't need that step. You're doing it yourself. On the marketing and promotion side of things, you're kind of already doing that too. I mean, hopefully you are. As an indie author, you should be out there hustling and taking classes and learning everything that you can to run good ads or good promotions or whatever it is, whatever you see that's working well for you, author newsletters, what have you. You should be doing all that stuff. And there's so many resources online where you can learn that stuff. If you don't know, if you're new to it, you can learn rather quickly, actually, just because of the wealth of resources that are online. So you don't necessarily need that help either. Let's see what's left. I can't really. And then finally, the final nail in the coffin. You don't have to give away 15% of all your earnings. Guess what?
Sure.
You can keep it because you don't have that agent. All right. Tell me why I'm wrong, Lindsay.
I don't think you are. That's the thing. Okay. So
yes,
I know. Yeah, no, I agree with you. If you are an indie author,
advantage, Paul.
Yep. We should have a big like whiteboard that just has a running tally of just like all of our epic battles that we have. Indie trad, plotter pantser, all the things. No, so I agree with you. There are far, far fewer benefits for an indie author. To having an agent, it doesn't make sense in most situations. So maybe we'll just talk about the few situations where, as an indie, you might find yourself in need of representation.
Okay.
And so one of those situations would be if you have your indie books out there and then you have an audio production company. I've seen this multiple times with my indie friends where they have not made an audiobook and, for their books previously. Mm-hmm. An audiobook production company specifically will see, it kind of doing its thing in the indie space, decide that they would like to produce an audiobook of this indie title, and they might reach out to you. So that's one of those very rare instances where somebody does that cold outreach, because we did a couple episodes ago, like all these author beware things. And one of my huge red flags was if they're contacting you, that it's a scam. Right. That is not true in this case. If it's a legitimate audiobook publisher, and you do have to be careful because I'm sure there are scammers out there that are, who are like posing as legit companies, but there are audio only companies who hunt around for, these like well-selling titles that don't have an audiobook yet. And so they might offer to produce that for you, which would mean you're kind of giving sub rights to them. And you might want an agent to help you navigate that contract because you'd be signing a contract with them.
Do you happen to know offhand what the percentage they typically ask for? Like what kind of cut of the profits?
Like for the audiobook?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I actually don't know. I know sub rights.
I wasn't trying to stump you. Yeah. I'm actually curious.
No, I'm actually like trying to think too. Like I feel like a lot of sub rights stuff, there will sometimes be like a 50% split, or I don't want to like say that though and then be super wrong about it. So I'm not 100% sure on that. But see, this is why we maybe need an agent to tell us if something, because for me as a trad author, if I open up a contract and it's like, 15%, I might be like, okay, thinking that's normal, because if you're talking about like a traditional book contract, that is normal with a traditional contract. You might see anywhere from like, I've seen 8%, which is actually really bad. Don't sign that contract. But, anywhere from 10 up to maybe even like 20 or 25 in ebook format. All of those percentages sound very normal to me. So if 50% is the standard for sub rights and you're like, 15, that's fine. You could be cutting yourself out of a lot of profits there. So this is
Yeah.
where an agent is very handy.
Right.
But
It would be a hard
yeah.
sell for me only because I think I mentioned I'm doing Amazon's virtual voice.
Mhm.
Like they let me in on the beta of that. So it's like I can create audiobooks for all of my books for free.
Mhm.
It's a AI voice, which not everyone likes, but I
Yeah.
offer it for like $7. So,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
try to like so in other words, and I would assume as soon as the beta is done, they're probably going to offer that to, all the, at least the people that are kind of all in on Amazon, like Amazon
Mhm.
exclusive authors. I
Yeah.
would assume, I could be wrong. I don't know the next phase, but I do know also some of the competing companies like 11 Labs and stuff like that that do the AI audiobooks. They're now starting to offer like cast, like so you have
Mm.
differing voices that you can do. So
Wow.
if you have a male character, you can have the male voice, and then when the female character comes in, now you've got the female dialogue
Wow. That's
responding. So it
crazy.
almost seems like a cast,
Yeah.
sort of audiobook, which would
That's
be
wild.
awesome. I hope Amazon does that soon. That'd be so cool.
That is
But
wild.
so that would be a tough sell for me personally, but yeah,
Mhm.
maybe that would work for some other indie authors. I don't know.
Yeah, and it kind of depends on what's being offered. What is the product that's being offered, and does it make sense for you? And yeah, as
Yeah.
technology evolves, some of these things may become sort of relics of the past. We'll see. What happens
Yeah.
with all of this. It just kind of depends on what happens in the future. But it's definitely been a thing in the past, and so has a not I was going to say a movie deal, but I'm not even going to get into that because yes, of course, if you get a movie deal, movie offer or something, please engage an agent or a lawyer, somebody to help you with that. But that's one of those like 1 in 10 million kind of a things anyway.
Right.
But something that is more common and still not super common, but more common than the movie deal is when an indie has been out there killing it. Sometimes a traditional publisher becomes interested in even the series that is already indie published, and they want to sign it and repackage it and publish it, or they want to partner with that author on a different series moving forward
Mm,
because they've seen the sales potential there. And so that might be a moment where an indie author is like at a crossroads, and they're becoming a hybrid author at that point, and
yeah.
you might want to engage. In fact, I would recommend engaging an agent at that point unless you have contract experience yourself and
Yeah.
you're real savvy with what you should be being offered in a publishing contract, because again, this is one of those rare instances where the author is in a position of power because
Yes.
that publisher came to you because you have something going on with your sales. And so if they're coming to
Right.
you, you are in the position of power, which is not to say that the publisher wouldn't look at, some counter offer and be like, yeah, no, thanks. We're moving on. There's some other big indie author we want to talk to over there. They might do that, but you have a lot of negotiating weight at that point, and you will want somebody to be your representative. I think you would want
Yeah.
someone to be your representative to help you navigate that because it's tricky, and you want to make sure that you take full advantage without blowing the deal up accidentally.
Right.
um, and making sure that any kind of requests or counter offers or anything like that are reasonable, because that is something that your agent should be doing for you, which I don't think I've said necessarily explicitly. We've talked about contracts, but that's something an agent should be doing with your contract, is looking at the terms and not only making sure that you're protected from anything that is we're not even talking predatory necessarily, but just not advantageous for you as the author,
Mm,
because a publisher can be very legit and even, fairly ethical in their practices, but their contracts, a lot of the times, the kind of boilerplate version of it is advantageous to them as the
sure.
publisher. And so your
Yeah.
agent is there to kind of hunt for those things and make sure that you are being taken care of, you're not being taken advantage of, and you're getting what is industry standard. And maybe they're willing to awkwardly, be the one asking for more. I hate that for myself, where I
Sure.
cannot be like, oh, can I please have more money, or can I please have more? No, I'm never going
Show
to
me the
ask that
money.
question. You're right. Ugh, I like get hives just thinking about that. But my agent does that for me. She's like, no, that's not enough money, or no, we want a bigger percentage or whatever. And she gets to be that person for me. And I get to just let her handle those negotiations. And she has negotiated either better terms, more money, or both for me on every single contract I have signed
Yeah, that's
with her.
great. And you've hit on the thing that would make me want an agent. If some publisher came and they said, "Hey, we like this book or we like your writing, can you write this book, this new series for us, whatever it is, and here's our contract." My immediate thought would be like, "Okay, I need an agent real quick here because
Mhm.
I'm going to get the bad end of this deal because I don't know what
Yes.
I'm doing."
Right. Because we
Uh,
just don't know. We
I'll
don't
read through the
know.
fine print and I'll be like, "Oh, it sounds pretty good."
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
do I sign?
Yeah, sure. Hey, they're going to make a cool, like, special edition hardcover of my book. Yeah,
Right.
where do I sign? Exactly. So we want that person to be advocating for us and protecting us and making sure that we are, getting the best deal that we possibly can. And there's going to be
Yeah.
limits to that. It's not like publishers are endless wells of, money where they're just selfishly withholding all of that from us, but it's just good business that they're going to kind of come in low most of the time. And that's another thing. If your agent is very market aware and savvy the way that they should be, they're
Mhm.
going to know which publishers are being withholding and which ones are
Yeah.
not,
Right.
because not all publishers are the same. And so
Right.
the capacity to negotiate, and this can even be true on different imprints at the same publisher. So without being
Oh,
too specific about this is on the other side of my career with like my nonfiction side, but I've had works with a particular large publisher under one imprint and then some other works under a different imprint. And this other imprint over here, it's a different type of book that they're producing. It's like, I don't know how to explain this exactly. It's where they're taking IP that the publisher owns. Okay, so they own the copyright on this stuff, and sort of repurposing and repackaging it. So it's almost like a content writing slash editing job. If I'm ever doing a book over there, like with them under that imprint, it's different from writing my own stuff.
hmm.
And so that particular imprint has a very different, like the contracts are a lot more narrow, I want to say, and the wiggle room is a lot less over there because it's just a different type of thing that they're
Yeah.
producing there. And so, and my agent she knows this, and she immediately can say, oh yeah, this is different from what we'd be looking at on with this other imprint or with this other publisher over here. And so they're not trying to like lowball us. This is a real offer, and whatever. So that's very valuable, because that's the kind of like back end stuff that you don't have any idea about necessarily on the author side, because we don't come
Right.
into contact with that sort of thing very often. So
Yeah.
um, that's very helpful to have an agent who is savvy and knows when a contract has the room to to wiggle and to ask for more, and when this is kind of as high as we're going to go, but maybe we ask for this other thing over here that isn't necessarily more money, but maybe it's this other thing that is better terms for whatever reason. So that's why I say it's always been either more money, better terms, and oftentimes both that she's negotiated for me, because it depends on who we're talking to for
Yeah.
that particular contract.
Awesome. No, that's great. I think we've covered quite a bit here, and we're
Yay.
running a little long as I look up at the clock. But no, all good info and all good stuff for authors to be aware of, especially if you're in the midst of trying to find an agent right now. I will mention one website because I think you let me know last time that it's still around, and it's one I used back in the day. Query Tracker. Is it .net or .com? I think it might be .net. I
Oh
forget.
goodness.
Um,
Possibly.
but
If
I
you Google
remember,
query tracker, it should come up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, I'll do a live search here. But this is where there's agents and they tell you what they're looking for. It's .net, querytracker.net.
Old school.
Yeah. But it's where, you can find listings of agents, and they let you know, this is what I'm looking for. And if you're going to submit a proposal to me, this is what I want in the proposal. And sometimes it differs from agent to agent. And then you can see what types of books they represent, what genres they're interested in. So wealth of information. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that real quick before we head out. Did we miss anything else? Is there anything else that...
Oh my goodness. We could do a whole sub episode on like, when might it be time to part ways with my agent, and like stuff like that, like, because there's definitely a lot that we didn't dive into, some of those kinds of situations, but I feel like we have covered kind of the meat of the matter when it comes to agent or not to agent.
Yeah.
That is the question. Yes. And we've given you the answer. Yes.
That's right. All answers here. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.